There has been a lot said and written in the last few years about America having a two-tiered justice system. There is the traditional system that we learned about in school, where justice is blind and there's equal protection under the law. And that does have a place. The idea, the notion, the goal that you will get the same fair justice for your crime or your innocence, regardless of your skin color, regardless of your sex, your sexual preference, your line of work, your ethnicity, does not matter. You will get justice and you will have a fair and speedy trial. That's the justice system the way we've all been taught it is supposed to be. The second tier, which I would say is actually the above tier, is that you are above the law. And there are people who clearly are above the law in this country. People who can get away with murder, people who can get away with wide variety of heinous crimes. You know, if I rob a liquor store, I'm going to jail. But if a bank system robs from the entire country on a massive level, well, they're too big to fail. We can't live without them, so we'll let them commit crimes. And this isn't a political commentary. Here's one that I think completely transcends politics. Jeffrey Epstein did not hang himself. He was in a maximum security cell. He was arguably the highest profile criminal in the country at the time, and suddenly he hangs himself with a bedsheet in a prison where there are supposed to be guards, there's supposed to be cameras on him. They can't find the film footage. The guards are asleep or gone or something. And the justice system circled the wagons to make sure that the American people were lied to and that his victims were cheated out of justice. That is a perfect example that I think we could all agree has nothing to do with politics, of someone over and above the law. And there are many examples, but I don't want to spend all my time on that. Then there's the justice system that we've been told about our whole lives. It goes roughly like this. If you have the money for a lawyer, you go through the system. If you are innocent, you'll be found innocent. If you are guilty, you'll be found guilty. And then whatever punishment is meted out, you'll have a fair trial by a jury of your peers or a judge, depending on the system that you're in at that moment. And you'll do your time or you'll get off, whatever. That's the American justice system. If you have been somehow wronged by that justice system, you can then appeal to a higher court. Eventually it can go to the Supreme Court, and the whole country can have the laws clarified so that they are better able to protect us as citizens. Until recently, it's been my contention that there's actually 3 tiers. Those who can't afford a lawyer, and they haven't committed a major crime. They are put into the public defender system, which really isn't there to defend the public. If it's little things like driving without a license, failure to have insurance on your vehicle, these are real crimes. They really are. And these are the sorts of crimes that people within the drug community, the addicts themselves, are committing day in and day out. Minor things, just not paying attention to life, and then getting caught up in a system that has for-profit prisons. This is a prison system based on keeping people in so that they can continue to get the money from the government. They have no incentive to rehabilitate anyone. They have no incentive to try. I'm not saying they're all bad. I'm not saying they all are the same. Clearly they are not. But the justice that you receive when you are poor, the justice that you receive when you are the hood rat, which is what the local kids are called around here, who are just hanging out doing nothing, doing drugs. The justice that the hood rats receive for their relatively minor crimes is one of get them in the system, keep them in the system, put them on intense probation, put them in jail 2 or 3 times for minor things until they end up in prison. And then when they come out, put them on a restrictive parole so that eventually they go back to jail and they go back to prison. And it's a revolving door, and it grinds these people into pulp, destroying lives over nothing, over minor offenses, things that really do need to be dealt with, But clearly there is something not right about that system. And so for the last several years, I've gone around believing that there was a 3-tiered justice system in America. And I was talking to my wife last night, and she pointed out that no, in fact, it's a 4-tiered system. The final tier, the bottom tier, the one where the buck stops, is honor among thieves. It's this code among the drug users and criminals that I find infuriating. It just makes my head want to explode. But nobody ever saw anything. Nobody ever talks. No one is ever aware of anything that happened. You'll see somebody with a broken arm. Oh, I don't know, he fell down. You see someone with stolen property. Oh, I don't know, somebody just gave this to me. They are completely outside the law, but it is a law unto itself. I used to be a worship pastor at a biker church in Wisconsin. Some of the senior staff there had been 1%ers, motorcycle gang members. And one of them had been the person who would go to your house and break your legs if you didn't pay your drug bill. And I heard his story many times, but to me it was almost fantasy. I'm not saying I didn't believe him. I did believe him, but it was such a totally different world than anything I had experienced that it was more like watching television as opposed to hearing about real life. But since I've lived out here in Picture Rocks, Arizona for the last 15 years, I've come to realize that that life is very real. There is violence committed on a daily basis, and it's all covered up. The police never know about it. The hospitals are lied to. There are home invasions and burglaries going on. And I don't want to make this sound like it's the worst of the worst, because I think that small town America has turned into this pretty uniformly. There are certainly places where this sort of thing doesn't happen much. If the type of ridiculousness that goes on here in my little community were to happen in Scottsdale, Arizona, well, the police would put a stop to it immediately. The police here, I've gone to the sheriff substation and talked to sheriff's deputies many times about criminal activity going on in the area. I've given them names, addresses, phone numbers, and what are they going to do? Honestly, what are they going to do? You know, as one of the deputies told me one day, they know their rights better than we do. And unless we catch them in the middle of something, there's really nothing we can do about it. And I get that. I also get that I've had guns stolen from me. I've had guitars, computers, amplifiers, many, many things that mattered to me, that meant a lot to me, stolen directly out of my house by relatives, by friends of relatives. It's infuriating. I had a person, and I will tell this story in full at some point in the future, but I had a person come into my house looking for someone who had cheated him on a drug deal, broke down my bedroom door while my wife was taking a bath behind the door to get at this person who wasn't here. Unfortunately, I wasn't here either. That really shook me up. But I'll tell that story another day. But the snitches get stitches attitude, I understand. I mean, I see people get harmed, seriously. Things stolen, cars stolen. And no one turns in anyone to the police. People don't even make police reports because the justice system isn't for them. They would be in more trouble. One of my sons would not go to the doctor even though his life was in serious peril because he had track marks all over his arms. And he knew if he went to the doctor, they would turn him in, he was in violation of his parole, and he'd be going to prison. I'm not excusing anything. I'm just saying this is reality for some people. I wasn't raised like this. I didn't know anything about this world or this life except for what I saw in movies. The reality of it is much less entertaining than in the movies. But that's my 2 cents, that there's a 4-tiered justice system. There are the untouchables, those who are too big to fail. There is equal justice under the law for those who can afford it and are in the right position. There are those people who are ground underneath the justice system and for whom it is a burden and an enemy. And then there are those who are completely outside the law. You have above the law on one spectrum, you have outside the law on the other spectrum. Anyway, I have no answers. I have no answers whatsoever. But I do know that we are all just walking each other home.